So what's up, Pamaric? The wood is moving?
Yes. The wood is moving. That's all you need to know.
Okay.
Damn wood always moving.
Yeah. As it does.
As it does.
Usually it's you want to use the dead wood for building the house, but you know.
You use what you can get. Iwa'eveng kame, ma frapo, and welcome to the Eana Mokri podcast. On today's episode, we're going to be discussing in depth the trailer for the upcoming Avatar game, Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, which was revealed about a month ago at Ubisoft's E3 event. We've talked about this before on the podcast in a previous episode. However, now we actually have something to look at and talk about. I'm not going to be talking about it by myself, though. Here today we have Eana.
Tsu'tey.
Myself, Pamaric. We have Blooms.
Ma frapo.
And we have Awe.
Tsu'tey.
All right, so the first significant piece of animated visual media vis-a-vis Avatar dropped about a month ago. Let's draw into our memory banks and remember how excited we are, or talk about how excited we still are.
Hype. I'm still so hyped. I really am.
Yeah, every time I rewatched it in this morning a couple of times to prepare for this episode, and just every time I see it, I always just get like really giddy and excited.
I just want to play it already, you know?
Right. Well, believe me, I hear that all the time. Why can't you just release it?
It's almost like game development takes time.
It does take time. It's taken a lot of time. We've known about this project for years. Like
It's been years.
It's been years.
I want to say it's been at least 3.
Yeah. For sure.
Already?
I want to say we heard about it in like 2018.
Crazy. Okay.
Yeah. I'm actually going to continue chattering. I'm going to look up exact dates.
So we're probably not the only one, because as I'm looking right now, it has been viewed over 3 million times.
Wow.
So people are definitely interested.
Yeah, the first announcement for Ubisoft's massive Avatar project was March 1st of 2017.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, that was over 4 years ago.
Yeah, it's been a while.
This announcement happened before I even joined the Avatar community. I had no idea that this was going on. Okay, cool. This is. I have to realign my like timeline events for this. So something that a lot of people talk about, and kind of rightfully so, is that what we got here was a first look trailer. It was pretty much just a cinematic showcase. And the developers have stated that this trailer was meant to showcase sort of like the feel they want with the game, and also the visual fidelity of the Snowdrop engine.
Yeah.
I can say personally, with just knowledge I have about how game engines work, how things appear, and the visual artifacting that can happen in a real-time rendering engine, I was pixel peeping for quite a while. And I can 100% confirm that all of this footage was not like, it wasn't pre-rendered. This was all running in engine. There was enough instances that I saw of texture popping and other loading artifacts that suggested to me that this is entirely in engine as it was advertised, because it was advertised as gameplay footage shown in Snowdrop engine. This is the visual fidelity that the engine is capable of. But with all first look advertising things, what they want to show you first is a vertical slice, which is fancy terms for here's everything that we want in like the entirety of the game. Like this is the level of polish that we're like going for. The game is not like done. There's not like the entire game isn't just sitting there this polished ready to go. But there is these are all assets that exist that exist within the game and were put together to create this sequence. And it's supposed to give the feel of the game. And I think they nailed it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. There's not much else to add to that. Like,
if that's how it's going to look like, then very much impressed.
Mm-hmm.
Next gen, or I keep calling it next gen, and it's not. It's here. The future's here.
it's current gen.
Current gen. Current gen hardware is this impressive. I used to naively believe a few years ago that there really wasn't anywhere to go with graphical fidelity, but this latest generation of consoles is actually truly capable of some really impressive graphical feats. And I think a lot of those are on display here, and with any other current gen game. I think the difficulty right now and why it feels so disconnected is because of the computer chip shortage, more specifically the shortage of GPUs, which is what's making all these next gen, current gen consoles like so hard to come by, as well as graphic cards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So while not a lot of people have these consoles right now, hopefully by 2020, and we don't have any more specific of a date, though I assume it's going to be summer or autumn of 2020 when this game is released, hopefully more people will have the hardware necessary to run this game.
It's 2022, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because you said 2020, so it's already here.
The future is
All
now,
right.
old man.
In 2022,
man.
we're going to go back and dub this, and it's going to be completely obvious.
But yeah, I mean, I have no background in game development of any kind or something. I'm just someone who grew up on playing games, and I am still doing it. And I've been waiting for this game since pretty much the first time it was announced that there will be a second Avatar game.
Mm-hmm.
The first time I watched the trailer, I was just like, okay, is this just a cinematic engine thingy, or is this really supposed to be in-game graphic? Because if it really is, I just hope my computer will be able to handle it. But I think so. And if not, I would even be willing to upgrade my computer just for that game. That's how
Right.
hyped I am for it, for everything Pandora, to be honest. But yeah, I'm so looking forward to it. Just running around on Pandora as a Na'vi, and yeah.
I got bad news. I'm pretty sure that to play it to its full potential, probably going to need a serious upgrade.
Yeah.
Mine's going to need an upgrade, and I have one that I built like a year or two ago.
Okay. Are you crushing my hope?
That said, the Snowdrop engine is actually pretty good at dialing things back. So, I mean, you won't have the same graphical fidelity on a lower spec system, but it is very adaptive. So you might be able to push lower graphic settings, maybe like 30 FPS or something like that. We don't know the specifics yet, but previous games in the Snowdrop that have used earlier versions of the Snowdrop engine have been able to run pretty well on lower spec platforms. So there's that.
That's good. That's not an easy feat to accomplish.
It is not.
But no, I was going to say, I don't know if anybody else has managed to get their hands on one, but I was able to pick up a PS5 a while ago. And yeah, like the graphics shift from the PS4 is incredible. Like the first thing I played through was Spider-Man PS4. They did a remastered version for PS5 with ray tracing, and ray tracing is one of those things that you don't really notice if it's not there, but as soon as it's there, you're like, okay, this is what I've been missing the whole time.
Right. Ray tracing is nuts. My first introduction to ray tracing ever was when I was in high school, and this would have been 2007. We had a program that could ray trace and render a 3D scene that we drew, and ray tracing that scene on 2007 computers would literally take 30 seconds for one still frame. And the idea of real-time ray tracing still blows my mind. And the way that they handle it now is actually pretty smart. They don't do a full scene ray trace because that would take forever. They ray trace specific elements, which is the smart way to do it.
Because if you do the whole scene, it would be impossible. It would take the Weta Digital supercomputer a couple of days to figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking to that, when I mentioned earlier that I was like pixel peeping or whatever, all right, I'm gonna try to give a very simple explanation of game engines and game graphics and why I'm not just talking out my ass here. Typically, when a game is processing a 3D scene, the objects that are closest to the camera that you're going to see the most closest up, they're going to use very high fidelity models, the highest fidelity that they have in the entire game. If you were to break anything down into just like a series of triangles, if you've ever seen like a skeleton, like a 3D mesh or whatever of something before, you see that's made up of a bunch of little triangles.
Look up Polygon Man from the PS2.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. If you imagine those, the ones closest to you will have the highest poly count, or the most number of polygons to give it the smoothest surfaces, and they're going to look the nicest. But things that are very far away, the polygon, if they were to use those same number of high polygon surfaces and objects for something that's incredibly distant away, when it finally renders, it's going to look, but the number of polygons won't make a difference. Like it won't make a difference that there's like 10 polygons like per inch of like tree bark. It's just going to resolve into like maybe a speck or like, a couple of pixels. So most game engines have lower poly versions of like trees and stuff that are going to appear at a far distance. And they might even be as small as like 10 polygons, or even just not even a polygon, just a texture. Just like a basically like a JPEG or a PNG that just looks like a tree, and it's
like a 2D, one of those 2D
billboard. Yeah.
The billboard graphics of like Doom.
Yeah, exactly. No, they might use one of those, and once you start getting close enough, they'll switch that object over from that billboard to the higher poly model, and they have a bunch of techniques that they can use to make it like gracefully transition. But if you've ever played a game and you've seen what is called texture popping, where something like suddenly resolves in higher detail, like it looks like kind of like muddy, and then it gets like suddenly more fine as it like loads, that can happen on distance, or that can just happen as the game is loading, because it's faster to load the smaller textures first, and then the more detailed, dense, bigger ones once you get close enough to them where they're going to matter. And there's a couple of scenes throughout the trailer where you can see incredibly distant objects will actually pop between a level of detail. But anyway, so the reason I'm bringing all this in is to say that lower spec systems can run versions of the game where if you dial down the graphics settings, it'll say, okay, I'm not going to try to load these immensely high detail objects. I'm just going to use the lower poly variants of things, which can render faster, instead of the more like immensely detailed ones. And I'll just say, okay, whenever we get close enough to load like the perfect tree or whatever, we'll just say, no, you can use one of the lower detail ones. It's fine. And basically, the lower number of triangles, the faster your computer can render it.
Yeah, I mean that's a pretty common technique, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's incredibly common.
I'd say like texture popping is used in pretty much any game that has any kind of 3D world with distance.
Yes. Without texture popping, your load times would be like easily 5 times as much, if at all, because if texture memory limits are usually what they run up against. Because like
especially with high fidelity stuff, we're talking like 4K stuff here. Mm-hmm. When there's things with 4K texture packs, you're talking basically 4 times the memory.
Yep.
And it's already using gigabytes of memory.
Yeah, a texture that is twice as large is 4 times as much in memory,
which is a lot.
Yes, it very quickly adds up as you increase the number of different like materials and textures that you have. And with Pandora having a billion different kinds of plants and animals and huts and clothing and everything. There's a lot of different textures going on here.
So basically, you're going to want one of those graphics cards that has like 16 gigabytes of GDDR sitting on them.
VRAM is going to be very useful for this. VRAM is the specific part of memory that stores just texture data, objects, sometimes shaders.
Yeah, if anybody's ever wondered why graphics cards have memory built in, even though you put memory into your computer, that memory is specifically built for the graphics card to be able to access as fast as possible.
Yes, precisely.
Theoretically, or at least from what I've heard, the new AMD stuff is supposed to make your regular memory as fast as GDDR, but I'm skeptical.
Yeah, it's possible. I'm not going to say it's out of the realm of possibility, or at least close enough where the average consumer wouldn't notice. Anyway, we're getting a little bit too technical now. I'm going to dial it back a little bit. So something that I want to talk now, shift it to the broader reaction to the trailer, not just our particular experiences. So one thing in particular that anyone who's part of any Avatar community would have noticed is there's been a sharp uptick in like new member joins, people engaging with Avatar stuff, people talking about Avatar, period. And especially in a positive light, because, I mean, Avatar is the internet's favorite whipping boy, but you're actually seeing less and less of that now. And this sort of goes to confirm the sleeping Avatar fan theory, which is a lot of people really liked Avatar, but just haven't had a reason to, like, think about it, because there hasn't been, like, new media or, like, new things to do with Avatar. And if you aren't engaging with Avatar insofar as like learning the language or whatever, where you're constantly having ways to engage with Avatar, then this is the first thing in forever that most people have seen, and they're excited. The reception for this trailer has been overwhelmingly positive.
The most negative things I've seen has been like, you know, the classic Ubisoft digs.
Yeah. Yeah, people poo-pooing on Ubisoft / AAA games. Usually, as is the norm.
Usually in reference to something like Watch Dogs or something, being like, oh, well, blah, 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 you know.
Yeah.
The classic stuff.
Oh, the first Avatar game.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and I understand why a lot of people would be skeptical, especially if they were to then look at the first Avatar game and be like, oh, it's Ubisoft. Ubisoft made this one like 12 years ago. This one's gonna suck too. And God, I don't know if I'm going to reach any new people with this, but there's a difference between a developer and a publisher.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Ubisoft is a publisher. They pay the bills and do the advertising. The developer is massive. They make the game.
Mm-hmm. And they had nothing to do with the first game as far as I know, so.
Yes, they were not involved at all with the first Avatar game.
Do we know anything about the actual content of the game?
Well, there's le'na'vi and there's humans, right?
So,
yeah.
What we know from what has been discussed is that you will play as a leNa'vi. There is no discussion whatsoever of playing as humans, which I think is the right move. If you are into Avatar and you are excited to play on the human side, I'm sorry to report you are in a significant minority.
Yeah, there's not a lot of people who are, wishing they were on the human side of that one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to alarm you, but you're already a human. You can be a human IRL.
What?
No, but in all seriousness, so it sounds like you play as a leNa'vi. There's going to be co-op multiplayer elements of some kind. It sounds like they're going for a pseudo living, breathing world where there's like, you can go on co-op missions and there's like always like new, somewhat procedurally generated, somewhat repeated content kind of missions where it's like, oh, we need to go to this location. Here's an objective. There's going to be like humans or whatever in our way. And then, we can work together to dispatch them and then complete whatever the objective is. Whether there's a story campaign associated with that makes these online co-op experiences a little bit more difficult to manage if you're trying to, like, if you have one friend who's in a different part of the story than you are. So there might be a mix of campaign elements versus like sort of freeform co-op elements. But one of the things they announced a long time ago was that it was going to be multiplayer. I mean, they hired specifically multiplayer co-op engineers and designers. And the trailer, which again was aimed at giving the feeling of the game, was aimed at giving the feel of the game. And there was the one leNa'vi, and then the other one came in and helped out, and then they were fighting together, and then they flew off into the sunset together.
How romantic. No, sorry, no. But it is what's also written in this on the official website, where they, what is that? Not launched, but
announced.
Thank you. Yeah, announced this. That they also said that it's a first-person view, right? So that's something I am probably struggling with. I don't know. It's more for the immersion, I think. If you were really going to explore the world and go to all these places and not have a person in front of the camera all the time. But that's how the people are probably, or gamers are probably divided on that as well, whether they like first person or third person games. I grew up with mostly third person, so not really don't know what I should make of that. But if it's for the immersion part, then it's probably good.
Yeah, I personally would prefer if the game would give you the choice, where you could like switch between third person and first person view, depending on the situation and what your preferred play style would be. Like whether you want to feel more immersed, you could go to first person, and if you just want to I don't know, because you're just so used to it because of first person shooters or something, or third person shooters, you could like zoom out and play in third person. So yeah, I would prefer having a choice there, depending on how I feel like in that, especially in that special moment, or whatever particular moment I meant. So yeah.
Right.
Could you imagine a virtual reality? Is there something like a plugin for that?
I hope so, because that's what I want to do.
Pamarik, not so much.
Okay, so I'm just going to say, from a design perspective, mixing the option of first versus third person, they produce fundamentally different experiences. They make radically different assumptions about controls, and thus the resulting gameplay experience is very different if you were to have the same mission play out in first and third person. There's no way to say this without sounding like a tremendous asshole, but gamers will often self-select into a worse version of the game because under the illusion of choice and preference, because they're afraid of experimenting with something else that is unfamiliar. Like, people will default to whatever is familiar without considering that different games have different needs and different perspectives offer different like experiences. And I think the immersion angle is the right one to go with anything Avatar. Like, I understand the third person crowd really just wants to see their leNa'vi doll that they dress up and customize to look nice, and they want to look at their character a lot. And you don't get that in first person. I get that. Like, I understand that desire. But for me, speaking personally, I think a first person view is awesome because what I like about Pandora is how immersive the world is. I can look at a nice character like in pretty much any game. Like, it doesn't really matter to me. And usually when you're running forward, you're just seeing somebody's ass like the entire time. Like, you don't really get to appreciate your character as much as I think people think they do in a third person experience. Like, I don't know, when I'm playing a lot of third person games, like, yes, it's nice to see your character and you can see like the space immediately around you, especially in like a 3D kind of combat situation where like there might be enemies behind you, and if you were in first person you might not see them, but with the third person view you can see like immediately behind you as well. But eventually, like, as you're playing the game, your character kind of just becomes a certain percentage of the screen that is obstructed to represent where you are in space. And like, you're not thinking about your character, you're not like watching them, you're watching the environment around you, where you're going, what you're trying to do. And I think your character kind of just is there, like, in the way. Like, it looks nice in screenshots for sure, and I think some sort of cinematic or photographic mode where you can like appreciate your character in this beautiful world, it would be stupid not to include something like that. But I think for gameplay purposes, I think just having one camera view, whether it's third or first person, and just committing to that is way better than having a choice. Because I'd rather have like a really good first person experience or a really good third person experience than like a slightly mediocre third and first person experience and having the choice between the two.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's ultimately the choice. Like, in people's heads, they can imagine, oh, what if there was the perfect first person and a perfect third person experience? It's like, you cannot split the experience that way. Like, you can't have the same experience in two different camera perspectives and have them be of equal quality.
I mean, what about the option that you would like when you're outside in the forest or something and fighting and exploring the world and going about your day? Basically, you are in first person playing. And when you're inside a village or the Kelutral or wherever your clan will be, you will then have the choice or will be forced to go into third person to see your character in world, like the spatial dimension of it, where your character is physically and seeing it like in relation to other bodies next to it and interacting with them.
I wouldn't be surprised for purposes of like cutscenes and stuff if it doesn't zoom out and show you third person stuff. Like, I mean, we even saw that within the trailer. Like, there were certain scenes where, like, even when the person like arrived at the village or whatever, like, you saw them third person sort of like ride in on their dire horse, and then they arrived and they walked up to that large beast third person, and then there was the first person's perspective with the hand, and then switching over to the other person. Like, multiple views in cinematics are totally fine because you're removing a control from the player. You're not like splitting the control experience when like, oh, I'm arriving at Kelutral, suddenly we're in third person. That's weird to like suddenly change how the game controls and how it feels.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And then it's like, okay, why did I switch to third? Then the person who's having a totally fine first person immersive experience suddenly switching over to third person is like, how do I go back to what I was doing before? And you're like, I don't know, just switching between them just creates like a lot of unnecessary gameplay friction. Again, like, this is just kind of me being an asshole.
As I said,
No, I mean,
I know better than you. Whatever.
No, but we have a different insight on all this because it's your job to create games, right? So your perspective on all this is a completely different one than mine. I'm just a dumb ass playing the game in the end. So I just know what I liked about games in the past that I like to play, and there even was a game where you like had the choice. Or for example, the dumbest or the most popular example maybe of the games I play is World of Warcraft. You can just choose whether you want to play first person or third person, and depending on the situation, it's like better to do one or the other. And of course, because World of Warcraft is such an old game, both perspectives aren't the prettiest or whatever, even though Blizzard make quite an effort to make it look good nowadays. But of course, yeah, I mean, it's your perspective, and then there's mine.
Yeah.
the unknowledgeable end user.
And I want to make very clear, I'm not asserting that my position is like objectively more correct.
It isn't. I know.
The developer has to ride a very delicate balance of, I have a vision, this is what I'd like to create, and also balancing at the end of the day, there is going to be somebody else playing this experience, getting something out of it. And you have to balance communicating your particular vision for, story, environment, but also just gameplay and game control. And that's something that's unique to games, is the way in which you interact with them is able to be fundamentally decided by the creator. And the way that you control a game is also highly influential on how that game feels and ultimately the experience and communication of the vision.
I'm sitting here thinking, I can think of quite a few games that do let you switch that are quite modern, but most of them are either very exploration based or super empty open worlds.
Yeah, that's also something that I heard, is that I don't know. I didn't know about this Ubisoft and massive thing, but from other gamers, I heard that other Ubisoft games function more or less with the same formula, that you have one story, and when you then go into the little side missions, that it's almost always the same. You have a huge, prairie or something, and then you have to hunt rabbits, or you have to search for something in a cave or something, and then but after a while it repeats itself. So
Right.
But I don't play games often enough to kind of assess that.
Well, and it also depends, because Massive has worked on arguably some of the best Ubisoft games, like Far Cry 3, The Division, and so on. At least the ones that I don't hear in that context. Like Far Cry I hear in that context a lot, but it's usually like Far Cry 4 or one of the newer Far Cries or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, open world games are inclined to be containing a bunch of recycled content, because customizing every experience of a incredibly large world takes an absurd amount of time, and it's a lot easier and more practical to either have recycled elements that the player knows how to interact with and what they're doing, so you don't have to re-explain what they're doing, and also just to have repeated experiences for those who want to repeatedly experience things. If you really enjoy hunting rabbits, then having 20 instances of hunting rabbits, that's going to be your jam. You're not going to care like how many times the game throws that at you if the gameplay is fun.
That was just an extreme example.
Of course.
I take back the rabbits. But I mean,
there's no rabbits on Pandora Plumes. I knew it was an example.
But I mean, I also said, from what I've seen so far, what the trailer reveals, I would be more than happy to just explore. And I think a lot of people who are Avatar fans and Pandora fans are very happy to just explore the world and just walking around and touching trees, or I don't know, and then they're totally fine with just exploring the world and not have a specific kind of mission. So.
Yes.
But I don't think that this will be the game, because it's Ubisoft after all, and Avatar's quite the big brand nowadays, and will it be even bigger, and so the game will cater to
What does Ubisoft have to do with this?
It's the publisher.
It's the publisher, not the developer.
Yeah.
They're not making creative decisions
both
about
then.
how the game is played.
Both then. I mean, the game has to cater to broad mass of people, and most people won't be interested in touching trees only. So
most people who are going to play an Avatar game are interested in Avatar, and most people who are interested in Avatar believe exploring, and this is the most common throwaway phrase ever, running around on Pandora is like the goal to hit. If people cannot freely explore in this game, then they fundamentally do not understand what Avatar is about. Even James Cameron's Avatar game from 2009 did actually manage to successfully hit on the point of exploring Pandora is fun, and they gave you a bunch of things that you could find and explore. Like, And if James Cameron is involved in this project, and he very clearly is, he would be pissed if there wasn't an exploration element, because that is sort of the point.
I didn't say that that wasn't debatable at all in my opinion. Well, that was not the point. I mean, it's just the game will not only be focused on exploring, because there will have to be some sort of story you have to follow.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
no doubt.
Yeah. That's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, it's one of those things, though. It's kind of like there's a lot of people. I was just looking at some of the comments on some of these, and it was saying stuff like they don't want a Far Cry Avatar skin. And I was like, but would that be a bad thing? Because, and the reason I thought about that is Far Cry is very much an exploration game. You can play it just beelining the story missions, but if you explore, there's so much more content going on.
Yeah, you can beeline the main story missions in a game like Skyrim, which arguably has a wealth of side content to explore.
Borderlands is another example.
Exactly.
It's a meme at this point. Anybody who plays Skyrim, the number of people who have played like hundreds of hours of Skyrim and the number of people who have actually beaten the story of Skyrim are two totally different numbers.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I probably fall in one of those two categories, and I can tell you right now, it's not the I beeline the main story mission.
Right. I'm just saying, yes, they do need to appeal to a broad audience to make a game that makes a lot of money, but to have a successful game, you need to hit on the fantasy that the majority of players are going to want to tap into.
And it doesn't also, I want to point out, it doesn't mean that the main storyline isn't going to involve exploration.
Yeah.
I think the key point to show that exploration is sufficient for any Avatar game is to just look at the Flight of Passage ride at Disney. Literally all that is flying around Pandora. Mm-hmm. And it still has one of the longest lines at Disney World. People pay thousands of dollars just to go and experience that. Granted, it's Disney, and that's kind of what they do. Right. But the point stands that it's been out for a couple of years now, and it's still one of the most popular rides.
My existential gripe with this game, this project, this trailer, and what we know about it right now is a very similar gripe I have with a lot of other titles that are upcoming, announced. A lot of people will sort of reflexively lay down their hopes on it, and they'll have an idea in their head of what they think it's going to be, or what they assume it has to be, or like people will make assumptions about things immediately, innately.
I have my story on there.
It's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think it does become somewhat destructive to be overly presumptuous about what you're actually going to get, good or bad, when you don't have anything concrete to actually base it off of. So to be pessimistic that it's going to be a Ubisoft game and therefore bad or reductive or cookie cutter open world full of non-tent to just waste your time is just as wrong as being, this is the totally hyper immersive Avatar world we've always dreamed of that we can just live in forever and just get explored like an endless world and look how beautiful it is. Like, I mean, both extremes are, I've seen both, and I think both need to pump the brakes a little bit and just go off of what has been officially stated and officially shown, which is a cinematic trailer and a couple of statements from developers, and let it be what it will be.
Full of non-tent. I'm dying over here. It's one of my favorite. But no, you brought to mind one of the pet peeviest things I've ever experienced in gaming.
No Man's Sky.
The No Man's Sky stuff, and everybody who was pissy about it. Here's why, everybody. There were so many people who were like, they said it was going to have multiplayer, and it doesn't have multiplayer. Every time I've asked somebody to show me where they said that, they point to like one interview and it was like a rapid fire interview where he basically said, yeah, we want to. And I was like, you guys are pissed that it has something he never said he wanted in the game. And in fact, he said the opposite. It's in it now, and I can't say that the game isn't better because of it, because I love playing it with like my brother and my wife. We play No Man's Sky for hours, but that one just drove me absolutely up the wall. I was like, nobody said that. Stop putting words in people's mouths.
It also just leads to a lot of disappointment when their particular headcanon of how something is going to be doesn't end up being what it is. So yeah, I'm taking a very similar stance to the game as I am with the Avatar sequels. Is I'm trying not to just speculate or expect particular things and just take the news as it comes and try to experience it with a fresh perspective when it is finally able to be experienced.
I mean, yeah, it's new Avatar content. We're kind of starving for that stuff.
Yeah, that's all that matters in the end for me, new Avatar stuff. And
I don't care. I'm gonna play it anyway.
Exactly.
I will just say, Pamarik is always the party pooper.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I'm always.
He is the designated fun police.
No, it's okay. But what you said, it makes you a little bit afraid of the trailer for the sequels.
Why is that?
I wanted to live in an ideal world where I just go into the movies and without having seen the trailer, as I did with the first movie, and just experience it.
You can just not watch the trailer.
In this community,
you can.
I can.
It's difficult.
Yeah, I would become a hermit, and then yeah.
Where did Ploops go? Oh, the trailer dropped.
Yeah.
Today on Eana Mokri, we're going to discuss the trailer. Ploops isn't here.
Go figure.
I will mute myself for those discussions. No.
We're going to discuss the trailer. Discord disconnect sound.
But yeah, speaking the trailer, I mean, what did we see inside of it? Not only like visually what the new Snowdrop engine, or not so new Snowdrop engine like promises visually, but content wise, like when I rewatched the trailer a couple of times, I tried to count the new animals that were shown there, and I ended up at 7 that are still unknown, at least in name.
Which is very exciting.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and they've specifically mentioned on the website that it takes place, or at least what I could tell, it's not going to be basically replaying the story from
the Western Frontier, which is like this new, previously unshown to us. It's not like undiscovered. I mean, obviously the Na'vi are there and there's wildlife, so like it exists.
And the RDA is clearly there.
Yeah. But yeah, it is a place that we have not seen before in previous media, and presumably won't see in near future media. But I don't know. Yeah. That's at least the vibe that I got when I was reading how they were talking about it.
And if those who very much follow anything that James Cameron says about Avatar ever, you will recall that he specifically said he wanted it, that Pandora is not a Star Wars planet. It's not a planet that's one biome and one thing is its thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's an Earth with many biomes, many locations, and many different stories happening. So I think that's part of the reason there's actually a pretty big fanfic community about it, because it's one of those situations where a lot of the fanfic could be happening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot of different settings, different places, different people.
Yeah, not all of it. I mean, there's some that take place after the story of the original movie and aren't like canon, but it's at the same time, as long as you're not using major stuff from the movies or anything like that,
right?
It's pretty much, that's probably happening.
It's plausible,
and it's good. I think that they deviate from the original storyline, that they not always depend on this. If this world is indeed so big and has so many opportunities, why not use them, right? So and I think for this purpose, the medium of a game, or maybe if it comes to that, standalone novels or further comic books and so on, it's the perfect medium for that, to explore.
Allegedly,
those.
novels are in the works.
Well, for how many years now?
I know, right? Well, like, that's the thing with anything Avatar is, like, it exists and then it vanishes, and then several years later it might rematerialize.
Remember, this game was announced in 2018?
17.
2017, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're used to this.
What this trailer proved to me was, one thing for sure you can always count on an Avatar is that we have to wait.
Yep. Waiting is like half of what we do.
Yep.
Okay, favorite new animal.
From the trailer,
The pay.
Yes,
Yes.
go.
the big guys on the planes that make that subwoofer sound. I found those very impressive and very pretty to look at, and I would be thrilled to learn more about them.
And it's also, I noticed when I watched this, I don't know what time it was, that they actually, like, they have like openings on the side.
Yeah.
So this, I thought the sound came from those from those ridges on their backs, but it's actually on the side that they have like breathing holes, and then they open and it makes. I was there. Yeah, that's impressive. Yeah.
Wonder if they were inspired by cicadas.
Huh.
That's true.
Interesting. Yeah.
Although cicadas produce the sound differently,
Yeah, they do it's vibration.
Yeah,
kind of
like a membrane or something. Yeah.
It's almost very similar to a rattlesnake. Yeah. But anyways.
Oh yeah. Speaking of snakes, there aren't any snakes on Pandora, right? Or snake-like yet. No. Well, we have spiders, but no snakes.
Yet.
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 Yes, my favorite, yet.
Gelly.
with a
Gelly.
DX at the end, yet.
Yet. Yet.
I think the little, it's like a lizard that's on the like one of the trees, and then before the game character steps out onto the Daliwang herd. That's neat.
Very precious.
Yeah.
Hexapedal. follows all the rules of Pandora.
Oh no! I know I have another one. It's the first animal that we see.
Oh yeah.
When they step onto that little thing. Is,
that leafy looking thingy, whatever that is. Yeah, it looks kind of derpy.
Always like a derpy animal.
Very fast. My favorite is the gigantic looking, like, village-sized creature. I really think that this, like, my headcanon for this scene, and again, as I just finished saying, I don't like to speculate about these things, but I imagine that, again, these are large animals that are used by, like, nomadic tribes, and they, like, are used as sort of like ad hoc building supports and stuff, because, like, if in the scene that it shows them, they're carrying just massive things on them, and some of them, like, look like they're forming, like, sort of like enclaves or like shelters. Yeah,
it's like and it also has like something like a tent over it, right?
Yes, exactly. And I just love the idea of nomadic tribe living with just large animals that are, like, sort of, they carry stuff, but they're also sort of like, they are part of the buildings, and then just, like, living that close to, like, this behemoth is just, it's a really cool, like, idea. It feels extremely Pandora to me, because one of the cool things about Pandora is how it's always playing with a sense of scale. And just allowing, like, the size of this creature next to the dire horses that are coming in next to it. Again, I always point this out when in group watchings of Avatar, but, like, that's a really cool scale shot, and I like it.
Did I see that correctly with on the plains where Eana said her favorite animal is that we see in the background, like a village, and it's like floating like kites floating from that spot. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what I saw too.
Yeah, I have the trailer open as we speak, and
Same.
yeah. So it looks like kites. Yeah, ikrang.
We should have done
Kites or something.
a Eana Mokri cast reacts to.
Right?
When the trailer gets announced, I will be filming my reaction to it.
Okay.
Just for posterity. I'm not like a YouTuber. Like, I don't like do crazy like like shocked faces or whatever.
Wow.
Like, to things. Like, I don't like scream and shout and like, jump out of my chair or whatever. I'm very muted in my reaction, but like I do get really genuinely excited about these kind of things. I remember
cut to 1 year from now.
when this was first announced, I was like, I felt my entire body like tense up and just like, pumping my arms in like place in my chair, just like with just like excitement, just like watching. It's like, oh my god, this is really happening. This is like, this looks good insofar as like, this is Avatar. This isn't like some other game with like an Avatar skin. They've taken so many careful, detailed, like,
There's very specific choices made.
yeah, very specific attention to detail, and the choices made and what they decided to show captures what people want out of an Avatar game, or like what people want out of the Avatar franchise, not just a game. Like, so much of this trailer is literally just beauty shots of like, look at this freaking cool world that you will be able to find yourself in.
Okay, now we have to bring up a point that Palm talked about a while ago in one of the Discords about the leap off the cliff bonding with the Ikran scene.
Yeah.
About how careful they were with those details.
Yes.
Since you were the one who said it, I will leave it to you.
I've talked enough on this podcast. There are so many very subtle details in how things are animated, how things are shown, that is extremely true to the canon. The scene in particular that Aoi was talking about here is, so when the player character, presumably, is running from the RDA copters shooting at him and jumps off a cliff and, yips for the Ikran, like, as he's jumping off and begins to fall, he reaches for the Q and has it in an arm ready to go, and then for when the Ikran comes and swoops in and they land on them and they bond in just one swift animation. Like, there's no like hesitancy fumbling around, but it's a detail that's there, and that like there's no shot in the trailer where somebody's riding an Ikran that they're not bonded with. Like, you can play Watch the Queue and they're always like bonded. Like, this is, and I only point this out because this wasn't the case in the last Avatar game, the JCAG, as they call it, James Cameron's Avatar the game from 2009. Like, you kind of just jump on like a horse, and like there's no bonding, there's none of that. And it always just felt like, oh, this is just another animal mount from like any other game. It wasn't Pandora.
Yeah, just like a tool.
Insert generic horse here.
And another example of this kind of attention to detail is whenever the Na'vi shoot their bows, they use the reverse palm grip, which it's unorthodox in the traditional archery sense to have their hand twisted where the palm is facing outward as you are drawing an arrow for a bow. But they do this in every shot with where they fire a bow. And like, just the fact that they gave a damn about that, as a detail that not even a lot of Avatar fans know about. Like,
yep.
It really clearly communicated to me that like, okay, no, they're not just making an action game with an Avatar skin. This is exactly the level of detail or attention to detail that I like this franchise for and appreciate it, and what drew me in the first place.
My like last bit of commentary on this is, I am super glad that it's not going to be you're playing as an avatar.
Yes, you are a Na'vi, not a Avatar body.
Yep.
Not a Na'vi poster. Sus.
That said,
blue is sus.
That said, there is a detail that a lot of people have pointed out where the Na'vi characters are using what looks like repurposed human armor. Like, possibly bulletproof or bullet resistant vests. I mean, the one Na'vi shot a arrow with an explosive tied to it. I presume that is not Na'vi technology. If it is, it's going to radically expand our understanding of how they are. But
turns out they had frag grenades this whole time.
Oh, really? Yeah. I mean, obviously, this isn't first contact in the timeline. Like, clearly, humans have been around for a while, and long enough for the Na'vi to recognize their dropped belongings as having value or use, and applying them.
Yeah. Someone even pointed out that one of the Na'vis is wearing not the armor, but some kind of clothing from the RDA. So
yes,
So either there is trade,
think I remember
or somebody just took this clothing and used it for their own purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I think the only thing that I'm annoyed about is that they called it Frontiers of Pandora, so I can't say FOP to mean Flight of Passage anymore.
That has screwed me up so many times recently. I remember... Okay, so there's context. There's a Frontiers of Pandora official Discord that is being run by, like, the community managers from
Link in the
Massive.
description.
Link in the description. Then... I was in a
conversation. Sorry,
Anna. I was in a conversation with I think it was with Mako or something, and he was talking about how, like, oh yeah, there's a lot of people have joined the FOP Discord recently, and previously FOP had been Flight of Passage. And I was like, "There's a Flight of Passage Discord." He's like, I said, "There's an FOP Discord," and he said, "Yeah." And the community, I've been in contact with, like, the community managers. I'm like, they have a Flight of Passage, like, specific community. Like, there's a community to manage. Like, and eventually, it's like, no, Frontiers of Pandora. I'm like, that makes so much more sense. Oh boy, I think it's a great sign for the franchise that we're developed enough to have redundant acronyms.
That is a good sign. Kind of wished it would have come a little bit later, but
right. You had all these letters to choose from, and you chose these three.
You literally had 26 cubed possibilities here.
Yeah, I always personally refer to it as just Frontiers, because Pandora is used in other contexts. Flight of Passage is its own thing, but this is the only thing that the word Frontiers has been used so far.
Froop. I'm using Froop now. Froop.
I can't untaste Fruit Loops when reading that.
What flavor do Fruit Loops have? Yes.
May I add just one more thing about the trailer?
Please do. That's what we're here for.
Okay. So when we saw these Nantang-looking ear thingies, which apparently are blind and just using their ears, I don't know. Whatever. The biome they were in reminded me a lot of European winters in European forests in winter, or the taiga even.
Ooh.
So I
see that.
I would be very excited to see the colder side of Pandora, not only the warm, jungly side of Pandora we've seen so far a lot of. So yeah.
This is something that and I'll bring this up. And I keep talking about Borderlands, which has the other Pandora. But anyways, the reason I keep bringing that up is because I think Borderlands did that very well, where they had many different biomes in the same planet.
I think
it made it much more unique. Like, you could go into pretty much any area, and not only is the scenery totally different, but the enemies you're facing are different now.
I think anything Avatar Media can do to get away from the Omaticaya and the jungles of Pandora, to sort of just broaden the broader perspective of what Pandora is, again, a multi-biome moon, the better.
Yep.
Yeah, and of course, I think literally everybody here would like to fly around in a rainforest biome because that would be awesome. But
It's what got us here.
Yeah, having some variety would be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, clearly they're gonna do floating mountains because that's like the thing.
Yes. I mean,
That is Pandora.
If you look at the majority of the trailer, it is very familiar scenery for anybody who has seen the first film. But it looks like the way I'm reading it is you will start with what is familiar, which would honestly make sense from a gameplay perspective as well. But then you will broaden your horizons to, a taiga-like environment.
Plains. There's clearly plains.
Yes.
Which will be kind of cool. I mean, going to Breath of the Wild is very much heavy on the plains aspect, but it does it so well that I've literally spent like an hour just riding around in that game and been like, where did all my time go?
Right. Yeah. Plains are interesting as long as you introduce elements into them and that they are not just flat land forever. Like, it's the hills that make plains interesting.
Yeah.
Looking at you, Skyrim and Fallout.
So yeah, we are all eagerly awaiting the Frontiers of Pandora. Either more information, gameplay trailers, anything. But if you want to keep up to date somewhat with this information, Eana Mokri should be the place to go. With that, we're going to move on to a little bit of news from the leNa'vi language side of things. There was a recent blog post on Na'vi, Paul Frommer's blog, where he announced that he's considering and sounds like going through with a little competition of sorts. It's not really a competition. Competition implies people are competing against each other. He's looking for people to submit idioms, proverbs, and other turns of phrase to add to the Na'vi language to expand the ever-increasing pool of idioms and phrases that make the Na'vi language feel alive and unique and special and like a real language. For more details, you can go to na'viteri.org, and that's all we really know about it. So how do you guys feel about proverbs and...
I'm always down. Proverbs and idioms are like my favorite.
Same. We have way too little, we need way more, and I love them.
Yeah, but I was reminded that I use the ones we have too seldomly.
Same. That was
Same here.
That was something I was going to bring up. Was like I love them. I constantly forget about them, and anytime like I'm in a conversation or like chatting in Na'vi with people, and then like I think about it in retrospect, or like I remember that like a particular idiom exists, and I'm like, dang it, I should have used that as an opportunity to use that.
As I said, like literally I think the one that I have actually incorporated the most is Srefwa Sknap Zizet.
Yeah, that's the one I see the most for sure. For those
which
learning
has
Na'vi.
a short form.
For me, it's so difficult to pronounce. I don't use it.
I use SFSZ, the short form.
Yeah, okay, good. But you have to know what it means. It's the same. I mean, if you remember that, what is that? Peon Toruke.
Yeah.
It's just a short form of, and then you would have to know the longer form.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Or Loriu Aonampi.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, I love that.
That one's a good one.
That's the one I can most frequently remember, but frequently. If you were to ask me, like, whoa, what's an idiom in Na'vi?
I just have one I've been using quite frequently, more or less, and that's flake fle le'fya.
Very useful one.
Mm-hmm. I think I do often remember Ketse Semikyun Kopult but
yeah, I think that's the only one I've ever actually used.
Yeah, because that's also the one that Frommer always quotes as an example for those very specific Pandoran idioms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
which again, just expanding the scope of those kinds of phrases makes the world feel more alive.
And I think it's a good thing that KP is deciding to do it with the community in a sense, because proverbs and idioms tend to arise just by using the language.
Yeah.
And so why not probe the community of people who have been learning the language?
So do you guys have any ideas you want to submit?
Yes.
Without hesitation, yes.
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 They are secret.
Yeah, well, I mean, we won't be able to really
cannot.
discuss them because they, if you want to send them in, it will have to be anonymously, whatever. Anonymously, yeah, thanks. So yeah, I have an idea as well, and I'm still contemplating whether to send it in or not, but I will probably do it. If it gets accepted or not, I will just be very happy to see new idioms by whomever they created them, because
Absolutely.
we need more, even though we use them quite rarely.
Well, maybe this will give us the push that we need to use them more.
Yeah.
I know I'm personally taking some time to learn the idioms that we already have, and again, just repeat and restudy and familiarize myself with them better, so I can deploy them where appropriate. And all it takes to get a piece of language to be used more frequently is somebody to use it. I mean, I've said this before, but a lot of the leNa'vi words that I know in my vocabulary are only because other people have used them. I'm at a point now where I don't systematically go through the vocabulary to find new words that I haven't learned. At this point, I only ever learn new words when somebody uses one that I haven't seen before or don't immediately recognize. So for me personally, the best way for me to learn idioms is for other people to use them or for myself to use them.
Well, that's a good way. Just give others the the obligation to use it in front of you.
Make me better at leNa'vi, everybody.
Yeah, exactly. Use
them
idioms.
so I can learn them, damn it.
Yeah. I can't do this without you.
You're responsible for my progress.
That's also true.
You're my only hope.
You're never alone in at learning leNa'vi.
It's a community effort.
One of us.
If you would like to join the leNa'vi community and learn among us and help Pominic learn more leNa'vi, feel free to check out the community at kelutral.org. Linked in the description.
By now it almost
Thanks,
sounds
Eana.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I was you're making me do my extra work.
Well, it's in there
I hope
always
you're
anyway.
You're keeping
no
notes.
Work there.
Close one.
But yeah, if you want to add, or if you have any ideas for good idioms we could use, feel free to submit them to leNa'vi. When Kayupo releases the Google Forms he will supply for actually being able to send in your ideas. So
Yeah, it looks like it's
I look
going
forward
to
to
be,
the episode
Google
where we
Forms.
discuss the results.
oh yeah.
That will be a fun episode.
So make sure you're subscribed on whatever platform you use to get these episodes, whether it's YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever other forms that we submit to. I don't know. It's not my responsibility. And with that, this episode is going to come to a close. Thank you for joining us. We did go on a bit long, so we will not be including leNa'vi conversation practice. But if you would like to practice your leNa'vi, again, please come on over to the Kelutral Discord server. We have lessons, impromptu lessons, chatting with other learners, practice, and just hanging out in good times. With that, we're going to be signing off. Hayalovai.
Hayalovai.
Hi, Edelweiss.
Bye.